Anyway.
So we hit it in there or some general brokerage?
Yeah, there were 3 brokerage that were approved last year by the commission.
So we approved them, but we didn't approve payment for the sale of our parkland.
No, it was just the general contracts with the three brokerage firms.
For an
Yeah.
entity that isn't legally exists that we never approved.
Yeah, because with the reorg, the new economic development department is, there are 3 different divisions in that. That's part of the reorg. Well, of course, Khalil's running the whole show, but Khalil can't be the department head because by charter you can't have an assistant county executive as a department head, so they're going to have to find a different department head who reports to Khalil. But even though he's still running the show.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the Committee on Government Operations to order. Mr. Clerk, would you please take the roll?
Commissioner Scott. Commissioner Clark Coleman. Commissioner Basham. Here. Commissioner Killeen.
Oh, yeah.
Commissioner Webb.
Here.
Chairwoman, you have a quorum present.
Thank you very much. Next item.
Next item B, approval of the June 12th, 2019 meeting minutes.
And a motion to approve the minutes.
Support.
Thank you. I have a motion and support. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. Item passes. Next item.
Next item C, unfinished business. There is none, Chairwoman.
Thank you.
Next item D1 under new business, forwarding the report on steps taken to assure senior citizens do not lose their homes as a result of the accelerated collection process.
Thank you. Is there somebody here from the Treasurer's Office that can speak to this? Oh, really? Is there somebody here from the Treasurer's Office that can speak to this?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I would move then that we pass for the day until somebody comes. And in doing that, I'll also observe that I think that the letter that was sent in response to the budget language is less than complying with what that language called for. So I don't see anything from fiscal year 16-17, well, except a summary number, and I think that what was asked for in the budget was a lot more than one single summary. So hopefully the Treasurer's Office can correct that when they come back.
Thank you. I appreciate the motion and support to pass this item for the day. And I would ask that staff inquire to Commissioner Killeen's statement that greater detailed information be provided, or they be ready to provide it so they're not blindsided when they do come to the next meeting. If you could move this. So I have a motion and support to pass for the day. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. Item is passed for the day. Next item.
Next item 2, approval of a memorandum of understanding with the Third Circuit Court.
Are there people here that can speak to this? Wonderful. Thank you so much for coming. Please join us at the table and state your names and titles for the record. Just hold it down till it turns. There you go. You got it.
Good morning. Pat Ways from the Wayne County Clerk's Office.
Thank you, Pat.
Ron Fields, Wayne County Clerk's Office.
Thank you, Ron.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, now that you know.
Thank you. So would you like to give us the executive summary on this MOU?
Okay, Ron.
Okay, we started a pilot project doing e-filing where the attorneys could file their case electronically, which was very successful in our first quarter beginning March 31st, 2012 through 9/30/2012. We started off making $18,000, which, like I said, this was just pilot. And then beginning October of 12 through September 13, our revenues increased to about 350,000.
Wonderful.
The following year, 510,000, as different types of cases were being filed. We started off just CK cases, and then expanded because it was so successful. And then our last year of filing, we went up to 587,000 in revenue.
Wonderful.
So we were very happy with this program. The clerk's office is responsible for all the e-filing, and unfortunately, the Supreme Court basically took it over. They seen how successful it was. We still have to do all the work. Our clerks still have to do all the filing. However, the state gets the revenue now. So,
And they changed vendors, so.
they changed vendors, yeah. Which the vendor the state forced upon us is not doing a good job for us. So, our people are working a lot more harder than they were under the original Tyler technology system. And then, so in 2015 through April of 2016, our revenues went down to $310,000. So we had discussions with the clerk of the Third Circuit Court, and they held some money back because they said the new system that there's going to require a bunch of equipment. So, long story short, we went to a memorandum of understanding with the Third Circuit Court, and they had held back close to $350,000 of our revenue. So we finally signed this memorandum of understanding stating that, this is dissolved. This is all the money that they've held back was $350,000. However, in this memorandum of understanding, they still have to provide any equipment, any technology as it relates to any electronic filing going forward with this new vendor. So prior to us agreeing, they didn't have that language in the memorandum of understanding, but our people convinced them to put that in there. So we agreed to settle, and then so we'll no longer getting any e-filing revenue, and the state's getting it, and we're still doing all the work.
Oh,
So
no good deed goes unpunished, I guess. That's terrible. Well, I appreciate the fact that you thought of it and, were able to get the revenues that you did while you could.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate that it went down that way. Do you feel comfortable, though, that the funding that you'll be getting per this memorandum of understanding will at least help you perform the function that you're still doing the work for?
Well, this was under the previous vendor. There was still some outstanding revenue sharing that we hadn't agreed upon. So this MOU is the result of the last payment from the previous vendor.
I see.
So under the new vendor, there's no agreement for anyone to get anything. So this is the end of that previous vendor's contract.
So the state's going to be now collecting this revenue. We're still going to be doing the work, and we're not going to see any extra funding for doing the work.
Right. Supposedly, they're going to give something to the courts, and then they'll give it to us. We really don't know how it's going to work. It's just not as smooth as it was under Tyler. It was very clear. But now we just know that Scale, Supreme Court is involved, and they make all the decisions. But as Ron indicated, we're doing all the work.
Commissioner Basham, to that point.
Thank you, Madam Chair. With all the legislators and where the population is in Michigan, and Wayne County has lobbyists, did the clerk's office ever interact with any of those lobbyists or any of those legislators?
Well, yes, we did talk to the lobbyist, and the Clerks Association, they have lobbyists, and they've been in contact with legislators. However, this was done by the Supreme Court, so there was that component was not impacted by this.
Well, I can hear what you're saying, but also the Supreme Court rules on laws. The legislature can make laws. So the Michigan legislature could fix that. I'll just leave it alone.
Yeah, because
I know.
and then they can work through administrative orders, so they don't have to do a legislative component of it. They can basically tell us what to do, and we have to do it.
Well, that's unfortunate. Any other questions? Commissioner Kleen.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Under preliminary concerns, staff raised some pretty good questions, I thought, that kind of went unanswered. One of the questions was regarding whether the clerk was a legal entity, and if not, why is the clerk party to an agreement? And the answer was because there was an original MOU.
but this is only about revenue sharing.
If I may, and Corporation Counsel, apparently wasn't aware of the original MOU, so I don't know if our council has looked at this. What's the answer to that question?
Through the chair, so I actually raised that question and had a discussion with Corp Counsel Mary Ann Talon.
Yeah.
And she did provide me an email indicating that she thought that this was sufficient as far as the county and the clerk and the way it was set up. So we've determined to accept that opinion from Corp Counsel at this time.
Okay, so you're good with that. Kind of surprised that Corporation Counsel was not aware of the MOU when it was entered into. And if they weren't aware of it, who the hell was?
So
But-
through the chair, if I may
Yes,
sort of
please.
respond to Commissioner Kling's comment. So it's not uncommon that the elected officials will have agreements that Corp Counsel is not aware of, and then they'll get some amendment. And I say that only because of the way we work with them and the interaction and some of the issues we've had with those agreements. So it's not an uncommon thing, I would say, that has
Really?
occurred often when it comes to the other elected officials and their agreements. As you know, our staff had some, what I'll call informational meetings with some of the county departments with regards to the contract and contract issues. So the next group would be the other electeds if they're willing to participate, and hopefully we can get some of those contract issues resolved. That way we don't have as much back and forth, because we have a lot of back and forth with regards to their contract as a result of things of not having Corp Counsel involved in the beginning.
Okay. Thank you for that. I guess the other comment I'll make is, and Commissioner Basham referred to it a little bit, I want to give the courts back to the state on their budget. If they think they can come in here and say, we're going to confiscate the savings as a result of this e-filing and put it back in our budget, but you pay for everything else, I believe the Michigan Supreme Court and the State Court Administrator's Office is kind of enforcing this idea of one unified court throughout the state. It's not a unified court if other units of government are footing the bill for the circuit courts around the state. So I don't know what we need to do with our lobbyists, or maybe what we need to do in terms of a resolution. But I think we certainly need to get with our legislative, Wayne County legislative group to say, hey, you know, they're cherry picking us, they're costing a lot of money. Either let us have all the savings and all the benefits that accrue from us paying for the court, or
Funded.
here it is, thank you very much. You figure it out in your budget. It's another one of these ways they mandate on local governments. And since they sit where they sit, apparently their priorities are more important than ours in the budget. So I would like to see us send some sort of signal and do what we can to say, hey, state of Michigan, have your courts back. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other comments as it relates to this item?
I'll move it for approval, Madam Chair.
Thank you. That item's been moved and supported. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, item passes. Next item. Thank you for coming. Next item.
Next, item 3, approval of a 2-year comparable source contract with either 2 one-year options to renew or 1 2-year option to renew with Giffords Webster.
Yeah, I was just going to say, items number 3 and 4 are related, and they both have to do with the Register of Deeds, and I do see that we have representation. Please come forward, Barbara, and state your name and title. Jim. Oh. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here. It means a lot to us. So, looks like we're hiring engineering firms to help us with the plats, but give us the skinny.
Barbara Johnson.
Just hold it till it lights up. There it goes.
Barbara Johnson, Chief Deputy Register of Deeds.
Just touch it.
No, just touch it.
Oh.
John, excuse me, John Reedash, partner and treasurer of Giffords Webster.
Thank you.
George Plants, Survey Director, Board Chairman Spalding DeDecker.
Wonderful. Thank you both for being here. Okay,
Amy-
what do we have?
One more.
Amy Miller, Vandewalker, Wayne County Plat Engineer. Thank you for being here, Amy.
Okay, Barbara, appreciate you. So want to explain what both of these different firms are going to do for us as it relates to plats in the treasurer's office?
In the Register of Deeds office?
I meant in the did I say treasurer?
I'm
Register
going
of
to give
Deeds
you
office.
a little background of why
Thank you.
this is necessary.
Yes, please.
About 5 years ago, we had 3 plat engineers in our office. Shortly thereafter, one left to go to Giffords Webster Engineers. And earlier this year, another one left to go to Spalding DeDecker. So we just have Amy Miller Vandewalker as the sole one, and she has many functions. She oversees the plat engineering area. She also supervises the mapping technicians. She is the county's representative for our survey and remonumentation program, and that involves a lot of work. She chairs the committee of the
Peer review
group, and she also is working on the county's plan for completing our survey and remonumentation. She also is responsible for developing the grant application every winter so we can get the funds done. And she also trains some of the employees in searching. And also, because we were having difficulty recruiting for this classification, even before the second person left, we had recruitments, and we weren't successful. And personnel had been involved in that numerous times. And so we had gotten so desperate that we entered into an agreement with the Government Administrators Association, and Amy is the president of the engineers chapter. And they allowed us to create a new classification called Plat Engineering Analyst. And that person handles some of the things that the plat engineer does, but she's not a licensed surveyor, which is really what is needed in the office. And so, for instance, she can't review plats. So Amy would have to do that function. And there are other things that require a plat, an actual land surveyor licensed in Michigan. So the Government Administrators Association has been working with us to allow these 2 contracts, and we don't have our signed memorandum of agreement yet, but in principle they know that it's really necessary. And also Amy is going to be taking some time off, so we're going to need licensed plat engineers to come into the office, and they'll be reviewing. I'll let Amy explain more about what they'll be reviewing, but it's really necessary, because if we don't have anyone in the office to review things like condominium documents and plats, it just stops commerce, because development can't be completed without certain steps being taken to get the documents approved and recorded.
Oh, my.
So,
Don't you leave, Amy.
so what we,
Well, she's taking a little time off, but I'm just,
so what we had asked each of the firms to do was to allow the employees who left our office to go work for them to come in to help supplement Amy when she's not available.
Which is smart.
So,
Yes, well, I appreciate that explanation. You got like the weight of the world on your shoulders over there, sister. And
Right.
and you know what is scary, and we see it over and over, is a lack of succession planning. I mean, we're short-staffed in every department, and then, one person, what, we hope you live to be 120, but it, eventually we all retire, and you have no one there to step up. So thankfully, you were able to get people who have the inside experience with those firms willing to come back and
Right.
hit the floor running that way because they have that inside experience on how we do things.
And one thing we found out through research, the average age of a land surveyor is about 56 years old, and people just are not going into that field like they used to. And with the pay that we offer, it's a little difficult. So one of the things that GAA asked for in the memorandum of agreement that we're going to sign is for personnel to do a salary survey.
So that you're offering comparable wages to hire those people, because probably if
Right.
you were, you wouldn't have lost the people that you had.
Right.
But, I'm sorry, did you want to speak, John?
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
just going to say, it's a great opportunity in surveying right now. We're way behind in keeping professionals upgraded. It's a good living. If you know of people that want to move forward into the design professions, surveying's a great choice. I'm just saying, there's a lot of availability for work. And the other point I wanted to make is these guys, this is an ironclad contract. I can't move anybody but Mike Manthei that used to work with them. I can only insert him to do the work. So I can't show up and schmuck my way through the day.
Yeah.
It's got to be a guy that's experienced.
Right.
So she and Amy did a great job on that. I mean, I'm just saying.
No, that
I'm
makes
gonna hurt-
perfect sense.
I'm going to be missing him myself. He's over there helping.
Right.
Because they understand what the practices are, and they understand the software that we use to record
Sure, it's
everything.
huge.
And Amy was going to explain what they were going to be doing.
Yes, Amy.
Well, we do a lot of reviews for condominiums. We don't get too many subdivision plats anymore, but a lot of condominiums. And the person that has come on board to help review condominiums, not being a surveyor, she's learning, but we can't straddle her with that burden at this point in time. So she needs some guidance from somebody that's been doing the work and that she can ask questions to. And we also are tasked with anybody that has problems finding a deed or any kind of document that the search counter can't find, they come to us, which again, she has some background in that and is able to do it, but she needs some guidance.
Well, this sounds critical. Commissioner Clark Coleman had a question.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, what kind of background does one need to be a surveyor?
To be a licensed surveyor, you need a 4-year bachelor's degree in land surveying or related field, 4 years of experience, and then there's a series of tests you take.
Okay, so with that kind of requirement, I would think that, first of all, I know that, I bet you, I would be willing to bet that the reason they left was because you weren't paying enough money.
For sure.
Benefits? Were they getting benefits? No.
Our benefits.
under
No,
contract,
okay.
but
So,
yeah, they make more than they were making.
Yeah,
for us.
so there are some classifications that you are just going to have to upgrade.
We agree, and we had mentioned that to personnel before, but the way the personnel had been basing things on is on retention and recruitment. And when I had a conversation with one person, she said as long as somebody responds to the recruitments, then you're actually recruiting. But the people we got,
They had no
most of them
background.
didn't even have a license. So, I mean,
Right.
you can't count people who aren't really licensed, because the software we use at Applicant Pro doesn't have any screening mechanism, so anybody can get in there and apply for a job. It doesn't weed people out. There are no keywords you have to use. And
Yeah, and the people that work for you, is there any kind of training that you provide that will, say as an apprentice, if you're working for a building trades, you would have apprentices who would work under those other people who would then go up the career ladder and be ready. You guys don't have anything like that, I
no,
know.
because you still have to be a licensed surveyor.
But wouldn't they be able to get that after they put in so much time working under someone who?
Yeah, but the new classification that we created is similar to that because it does do a lot of those functions. And we do have another classification that Amy supervises called mapping technician. And that might be something that we have to think about for that one because we're having a hard time getting those too.
So
But
what
I
kind of salary are we talking about before. I mean, yeah. When these two
Around
guys left,
60. Yeah, low 60s.
Yes.
George Platt, Spalding Didactic. I'd just like to add as well, too, Barbara, you did a great job in trying to figure out how to make something work with Amy.
Yeah.
But we have the same problem just on the consulting world, as it was said here, that there's just not too many of us surveyors that seem to be around anymore.
Wow.
And you got no youth going into the field for whatever the reasons are. It makes no sense to us, but it is what it is. High school guidance counselors or whoever don't, funnel people there. We're civil engineers, but kind of a field side of it, right? That's kind of you could sum it up a little bit like that. To answer your question a little bit about having somebody be learning on the job, you can do that, but you still need that 4-year degree, as Amy mentioned, and then you need to work 4 years underneath the direction of a professional licensed surveyor. Then you need to pass some state of Michigan exams. Wow. So it is a rigorous process. But there's just not the kids going into it anymore, and we have the same stresses on our organizations as you guys have.
so I was just about to say, so what are you doing as professionals to work with the schools? Because I'm sure that many of the counselors don't even know about.
We try to do some career days and try to get it through that kind of process, different high schools, and show up and show kids when they come in with their parents, and usually they're middle school age. If somebody's already a senior in high school, it's too late, really, probably because they already know what they're going to do. But so you got to go, you try to go that route, and through the professional organizations of National Professional Society of Surveyors and stuff like that. You try to educate, but again, I guess we haven't done a very good job of it. I guess I don't know the answer.
Okay. And so what I'm hearing, so civil engineering really is your background.
Well, no. Civil engineering
it's the background for
civil engineering and surveying are two distinct professions. We run down the same channels, but if you're a civil engineer, you're going to have to do the same thing: go to school, get a 4-year degree, work underneath somebody, pass exams.
Even though they are graduate.
Yes.
Civil engineers.
Yep.
They still have to do that same
Yes.
process. You guys are not going to get anybody for $60,000 to do all that.
That's the problem.
That's the problem.
So it's more retaining even than recruiting. We had to retain the ones we had. Commissioner Colleen, then Commissioner Basham, then Commissioner Baker McCormick.
Busy agenda item. I may be going a little bit down the same road that my colleague Commissioner Basham is going to go in a minute. As I look at both of these contracts, has Giffords supplied this kind of plat survey services to your office previous?
Giffords Webster is currently our contractor over our survey and remonumentation program. But
Is that the same category of work as to what this speaks to?
No.
So they haven't done this work for us
Correct.
before?
Only one of their employees who left our office
Yeah.
did that work.
And I see on the records, as far as Spalding D. Decker Associates is concerned, they provided some engineering services on roads, which I imagine those contracts were done with the roads department. Have you hired that company prior to this to do work for your office?
No, the only contact we had is that one of the land surveyors left our office to work
Yeah.
with them. But
Well,
other than that.
yeah, because I'm a little concerned that this is coming to us as comparable source here. And as I look back here, you report back as far as 14 that you've been losing staff, and we're shorthanded 2014. I don't know what the lay of the land is out there. I'm hearing a little bit from these gentlemen. But it seems to me this should have been RFP'd for these services. And since neither one have provided these services, and the fact that some of our employees left and started working for them and then we kind of move them right to the head of the line without a RFP, and just doesn't sound right to me that maybe there's a little bit of an inside track in order to get these jobs done. So I'm a little bit concerned that that these were done. I mean, it'd be one thing if they had been working with us for years and years and years, providing these services. But since these are new services that you're contracting for, it gives me a little concern that we're doing comparable source, I should say, right out of the gate. I do want to ask our staff under the documents section. The last thing that you report to us on in the packet is a vendor quote, and in both cases, the check marks is not yes or no, it's non-applicable. What does that tell me? No quotes were gotten? What does that tell me? I'm asking my staff, and then we'll...
Chris Albrecht, Wayne County Commission. That's just to let you know that in this case, we didn't require that the Register of Deeds office provide or that the department provide a vendor quote, for example. Sometimes we don't have contracts, like actual full contracts like we do here, and so then we rely upon quotes from the vendor to verify the amount.
And why do we think it's okay not to have those quotes?
I don't know that I can fully answer that question. I know, for example, though, when we when we send out an RFP, that results in a contract. When we send out an invitation for bids, that usually results in a bid.
Right. So the concern I'm raising, and I'll give you a chance to respond. It looks like my attorney's about to weigh in. It almost gives you the feel of we want to do business with you. Fill in the blank at the end in terms of what you're going to charge us for this. But is there a concern about not having a vendor quote? Or counsel, did you have something to add?
Through the chair, I was going to say that because this is comparable source, that you generally wouldn't get a quote. That's not to say that the department didn't do some type of negotiation with the business to determine the price.
Yeah.
But that's not something you would generally receive or see with a comparable source contract.
We're back to the leaky bucket that is comparable source. Would you like to comment on how you settled on a vendor price?
I would like to, Can I address the first one?
Absolutely. You can address anything I just said.
Okay, the first issue, the reason it was not done as a RFP is because the primary reason that we needed somebody familiar with coming to the office is because Amy's overburdened with training the new person who's in the plat engineering analyst position and overseeing the mapping technician. We've also been working on prepping exams so that we can get another mapping technician and continue to recruit for land surveying. So we wanted someone who knew the land record system because our land records database is complex. Somebody's got to come in there and be taught how to use it if they don't know. Michael and Scott worked in the office. They're very familiar with that software. They also know about the software that's used to document the condominium process, the condominium review process. So that would be a time-consuming task to have someone come into the office and train them on that because they wouldn't have that background. Makes perfect sense. So because we are at the point where we are, and as I said, we have been recruiting for the position before, but we never thought it was going to continue to be this difficult. And we worked on getting that new classification so that we would still be able to get work out. So that's why we had talked to Aaron and explained to him why we wanted to do a comparative source versus a RFP. And as far as the pricing goes, both companies submitted letters which are in the TCM database that circulates for approvals that indicate what their hourly rate is and what the amount of the contract would be for the services. So we determined what the maximum would be for each contract.
Okay.
based on the rate and everything, and what we were going to have them do.
Okay.
And just to-
Let me, if I may, sir, let me back up. According to my paperwork, you've had this vacancy since 2014. So you've been running shorthanded maybe for 5 years. That's not correct?
We have been shorthanded but managing. It's just come to a real head after the second person left because, as I explained, what Amy's functions are and their tasks that the state wants us to wrap up, like
So one person left in 14. When did the other person leave your
he
office?
left this year.
This year. I'm just saying in terms of public contracting, right? You have been shorthanded over there. And, and looking at the paperwork, you first started this paperwork, I don't know, things like a few months ago. I'm just concerned that, first of all, it doesn't look right that we did, to my mind, that we did an RFP it. We do have this category, comparable source, that gets used. But given your struggles in filling those, that we didn't go out earlier for an RFP, certainly if you do RFPs and you look at the vendors that respond to the RFPs, certainly things like we know your system and other factors would lead you to what firms are the best one to hire you. The question I'm raising is we haven't hired out for these services before, and instead of casting the wider net, we decided to do it very narrow, and to me that just doesn't look right. I'm very much, the way public contracting ought to be, and no one should have an inside track by using something like comparable source, but it should be out there to the market to decide. So I understand your answer. I hope you understand where I'm coming from in raising this, and I will leave it at that.
Can I make one more comment? And you have to think, we realize that you believe we should have started early and got an RFP, but you have to think about it too. This is bargaining unit work that we're asking outsiders to do. So we have to act in good faith to maintain labor relations with the union. We can't just go out without making an effort to try and recruit. And we have made efforts, and we did get another person who was in personnel who assured us she thought she had the key to us getting some help. So our first priority was to try to get it within the constraints of the union management mechanism, and not just run out and say, well, we're going to get a contractor without us trying to recruit and get some more help for you. So.
Well, I understand.
Okay.
I understand that, but also that's what we sign up for in the public, is that you do have more bureaucratic hoops to go through, and we have all these laws and procurement ordinances to protect that. If we were just private industry and we could just handpick people, hey, that's what private industry does. But as the public, and spending the public dollars, it just seemed in this case that, and I know it causes you more heartache and everybody's shorthanded and all that kind of stuff, that we didn't go the route of an RFP. And it just looks a little too cozy to me to do the comparable source. So that's the reason I raise it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Sure. I have a list. Commissioner Basham?
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I not too long ago had a survey done on my property, and I know it's difficult to find surveyors. I know it takes time to get it done and all that sort of stuff. But also, to your point about the unions, I used to be a bargaining committeeman. That's how I got my gray hair. So I know about import, export. I know about bargaining, I know about contracts. And lastly, I would just say that I agree with Commissioner Cleen in as much as you could have wrote the criteria for an RFP so that they got to be familiar with this software, what the criteria is that you need in your office, and still had the same purpose without us going through this big thing about comparable source. As somebody who could have let the contract and made it cleaner, sweeter, and put more sunshine on the process versus the Register of Deeds doing a comparable source contract, then all the flags go up all over the county. So it's hard for me to support comparable source when, in fact, it's not about who's doing the work and how hard they'll work and how they know the software. It's about our policy as the legislative body of county government agreeing to comparable source. And so I'm just basically echoing what my colleagues, said. And so I just think that the administration, when they want to get a vendor or get some work done, they could have got the same vendor and the same work done if they'd have just did a specific RFP saying, we need you to be familiar with X, Y, and Z. It's done. You can't just handpick who you want. Like you said, it's private industry can, but we can't. So, thank you.
Commissioner Baker McCormick, then Commissioner Baydun.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As a real estate broker for over 20 years, I've worked with surveyors, and it is a very competitive industry. However, I think that if it had been put out there in the RFP, you probably could get folks that meet the criterias. So I have to agree that it should have been some other process, just to make sure that the process is fair and that we're getting the best qualified individuals and that the taxpayers aren't paying more than they should. So I just wanted to see if you looked at seeking those individuals through different real estate boards, real estate associations, or,
We did try getting land surveyors through the organization at the Michigan, what is it, Amy?
Society.
Yeah, Michigan Society of Professional Surveyors.
Surveyors.
We posted our information there. Dana Thompson made contact with some of the schools.
Sounds like they tried.
We brought it up. Amy and I also attended a statewide conference of people who are involved in the survey and remonumentation program, and we did mention it to other people who were there, land surveyors, and asked people to get the word out, so we did bring it up. We've been trying to get someone. And again, I just want to say that because this is bargaining unit work and we're limited in what we can do, we couldn't just go out there and do a RFP without GAA's permission. And when we got to the point where we needed someone, we discussed it with GAA, and the resolution was, well, only if it's people who already know it, because they wanted to make sure we weren't trying to just put people in there and have them stay and do work that they want their members to be doing. And so this is something that's short term, and in the agreement we're signing, they only want it to be for that limited period of time, and they want us to keep recruiting, or else we're going to have to not be able to use anyone.
Thank you.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Commissioner Baydun.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, as a real estate broker as well, I will offer my input. There is a lack of surveyors out there. I go through it all the time. I just asked Amy how many condo projects are waiting for documents to be reviewed. She just told me there are 5. I don't know how big these condo projects are, for the largest county in the state to have one person reviewing documents for developers is totally unacceptable. From my side of the business as a real estate broker representing a condo developer who's investing money, borrowing money from the bank and paying on the loan to construct a project and waiting for documents to be reviewed, I mean, that doesn't look good for us as a county, quite honestly. I don't envy your position, by the way. And I do agree with my colleagues on the RFP process. However, in this case, I would be willing to make an exception to bring somebody who's familiar with the process in your department. I don't want to personally have an RFP and bring somebody in there where you have to train them and they don't know what they're doing. I'm very familiar with the firm Giffords. They've been around for a long time. They're reputable. And this is just a thought to this committee, Madam Chair. Maybe we can move this forward, but next time we can put a process in place. And, with my contacts, I'm willing to contact the Michigan Association of Realtors and see if there's any ways we can recruit people to the county, to come and help you in your department. But I don't envy your position. She's leaving, it sounds like, on vacation or personal time.
Yes, the end of July, I'm going to be.
So we possibly could be without anybody reviewing documents. And what do you tell these 5 developers in Wayne County that are waiting for their projects to get off the ground? I mean, that doesn't make sense. It's unacceptable. Something is wrong with this picture. Although I do agree with my colleagues, like I said, on the process of RFP. But we need to come up with a solution so we can get the process moving, for these developers.
I have Commissioner Killeen and then Commissioner Clark Coleman.
I appreciate everybody's comments, my colleagues on this. And I heard you mention a short-term need that we needed to get somebody in. But as I look at these contracts, and here's where I'm going, Madam Chair, these contracts are 2 years with either 2 one-year renewals or 1 2-year renewals. I'm all in favor of being practical, and I understand the practical situation you're in. So I don't know if we can do this, but I would like to move these contracts forward without renewals at the end of them, because you've had discussions with GAA, and maybe 2 years from now these would be RFP-able at that point. But if we leave them with the renewals, then we're saying, I want to get at we need RFP. And so I'm thinking, if it's possible, and council perhaps can tell us this, that we can move these forwards just as 2-year contracts and not with renewal requirements?
I don't think we can change the terms of the contract that's before us, only vote it down and have them come back with a different one, but we'll hear from Commission Counsel on that. Or can you do it as amended?
So through the chair, this body doesn't amend the contracts.
That's what I
You
thought.
can request the department to amend the contract. If the department refuses, then you have the option of, again, voting yay or voting it down.
So he can make the request that they remove it before full board, to reduce the portion?
Well, I would do that, and the other thing is, it will more than likely come back for the 1 year or a 1 2-year at the end of this. It's a 2-year contract, and they got 1 2-year extensions. Those will have to be approved by the commission, as well as either a 1 2-year extension or 2-year 1-year extensions.
Pick it up at that time.
So the other thing we can do as a commission at that point, as they're coming up for renewal, is to say, no, we're not going to re-up it unless you RFP'd it. So I don't know how we make that kind of a statement and give the register a couple of years to prepare for that, if that's the eventuality. But I think we have to be careful with, I understand the practicality and the need that we have, but also if we're going to say this doesn't look right for comparable source, if we just let it go as is, then no message has been delivered to anybody, and people say, we'll send it up to the commission, comparable source, and it'll go through and no problem. So I want to make it a problem a little bit in one or two ways. If we can't amend it today, then we also need to say to the office, please look at RFP, and when we come back here for renewals in a couple of years, that we have a conversation around that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Clark Coleman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that the department got the message loud and clear that this is what's expected. And I'm sure that they know that they'll have to go through this all over again. So I'm going to move this.
And I'll support it. I have a motion and support. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Just one of them or both?
I'm moving both.
Items 3 and 4. That's permissible. They're yeah. Okay, so items 3 and 4 have been moved and supported by Commissioners Clark Coleman and Commissioner Scott. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
One opposed. May the record reflect. Commissioner Basham is a no vote. Thank you very much. Item passes. Thank you. Appreciate you all coming.
Thank you.
Yes, no, we should go into 6 first. We're gonna move to item 6 because item 5 is a closed session. So we are gonna take the liberty of getting item 6 resolved before we go into closed session. Item 6.
Item 6, an ordinance by Commissioner Basham to amend Chapter 120, Article 3, Section 120-50 of the Wayne County Code of Ordinances.
Okay, Commissioner Klein?
Madam Chair, if you don't mind, I'd like Commissioner Basham to lead this off and tell us what his amendments to the procurement ordinance are and what they're going to accomplish.
That was my plan. Commissioner Basham.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Clean, for that. But somebody that can speak better language than I can, I expressed what I wanted, but our commission counsel actually can be more specific about it, I think. So could you just sort of macro this?
Commission Counsel, could you give us a quick overview on what this or change to the procurement ordinance will accomplish?
Through the chair, so the majority of the revisions are for clarification purposes, to clarify certain provisions, to clarify the purpose, and to clarify what retroactive what is a retroactive contract. So we have a practice, and over the years since this has been implemented, to determine what it is, and we've been acting in that manner, and we just want to make sure that's memorialized. So the primary change is to clarify and to put into writing what a retroactive contract is. This doesn't change the practice. Again, this is more putting the practice in writing. The second primary change is that the current ordinance states that Corporation Counsel shall institute a lawsuit anytime there is a retroactive contract. This proposed amendment would say that Corp Counsel will institute that action only when the contract is not approved. So in instances, and this is majority of time, I think every time actually, if there's a retroactive contract, but this body or the CEO approves that contract, that means that the services and the payment is being approved by the appropriate authority, even though it's after the fact. Therefore, there really aren't any real damages for Corp Counsel to seek in a court. So we don't want to put Corp Counsel in a position of saying you must file a lawsuit if there's really no damages because the body has approved the contract. So what this proposed amendment says that, again, when this body or the CEO does not approve the contract and it's retroactive, at that point, then they seek those legal remedies on behalf of the county. So that is the second significant change. The other significant change is that currently, Corp Counsel provides a report after the fact. For every retroactive contract, you get a letter telling you whether or not they believe there were any damages. What this proposed amendment would say Corp Counsel will provide an assessment of that retroactive contract beforehand, so when it comes to committee, you'll have that assessment, so before you vote, you'll be fully informed of that assessment. And we've agreed with Corp Counsel to make sure that they're, even though they approve these contracts, someone in their office, that our staff will also notify them, so that way they'll have an opportunity to prepare that letter before it gets to committee.
That makes perfect sense. Commissioner Basham.
But if I may, I'm sorry, also, Madam Chair, we just had a major discussion about retroactive contracts dealing with insurance issues. So if you could expound on the insurance part of that?
Yes. So through the chair, as you're aware, when you get the insurance contracts, they're always retroactive. Claire has indicated on numerous occasions that they cannot get the insurance quotes before 30 days.
Right.
And by the time she processes them, they're here after the fact, and we call them retroactive. And Claire is here for further clarification, but it's our understanding that there is really no practical way to have her get those contracts to this body in a timely manner. So the suggestion is that we include in the exemptions that we currently have, like grants, where we've already acknowledged that we can't control the timing of those, that we include insurance policies as an exemption as well. That way they won't be labeled as retroactive when they are submitted to the commission.
And that makes sense.
So that is a proposed amendment that we're seeking to add to section Section N on page 3, that we would add an item number 7. So it'll, at the very end of that section, in addition to the 6 current exemptions, we would add at the end of that section and insurance policies. So that way they will also be exempt from the retroactive provisions of the ordinance. So that is a proposed amendment that we need to make during this meeting.
Okay, a proposed amendment.
Yes.
Okay.
And that allows us to continue to try to row together versus being, adversarial perspective on an ordinance that actually is meant to help everybody.
That makes sense.
But thank you.
So, okay. So do we have any questions then from Corp Counsel? Do we have any questions for Corp Counsel? Any members of the body? No? Sure.
Well, and just, we wanted to attend, and I don't know if Aaron has any comments, just to say that, I think that Commission Counsel did a great job in cleaning up the document. A lot of the changes were definitely necessary for clarification. We had some back and forth. Corp Counsel made a couple changes that were accepted, and we proposed some changes that weren't accepted too. So, just to be here at the table to say there were a few things that Corp Counsel, on behalf of the administration and people that are administering contracts, did have a little bit of a problem still with the ordinance. Namely, one of the ones that really stuck out to me more was when we changed and the definition of retroactive contract was updated. But we had a proposal that, we have this situation that happens all the time where a contract is submitted through the TCM process before it expires, but for whatever reason, the litany of reasons doesn't make it here until it's expired, and then it gets called retroactive, and then there's potential for disciplinary action of employees and civil actions and all these things. And so I was hoping for a way that we could sort of spell that out in the ordinance that says, it's not retroactive if it's negotiated and it's submitted prior to its expiration date, some reasonable time. I proposed 2 weeks, so that's not to say that there wasn't a lot of work, and I think that the revisions are good, but I'm not totally clear, because I'm still new here at the county, how this process works. If it's approved here, do we come back and talk about it again? When does it go to the full board? I'm not clear on that, but again, so there were some back and forth, and there were some things that we still had concerns with that weren't fully resolved, and I would just hate for an ordinance to be passed without that being noted.
We have Commission Counsel.
And through the chair, we've had, even prior to Cheryl, we've had numerous discussions with individuals in the administration regarding the timing of the retroactive piece. And what they're suggesting simply doesn't work, and I'll tell you why. If they submit it in TCM and it takes them 60 days or 30 days or however long to get their 8 signatures, then it's not clear to us. That's still within their control, and it's their process. So it's not clear to us how that would prevent a contract from being retroactive, because it hasn't reached the commission.
Correct, and we can't be approving contracts that are already let. I mean, basically, they're letting contracts without our approval because they're in the system. Okay, I get you. Commissioner Basham, and then who do I have?
Just
Commissioner Colleen.
to the point that Corp Counsel made, it took me under a different administration over a year to get this done. That was the first one. And then I had a letter in writing saying from the county exec he wasn't going to go by it. And then we were ready to pursue our options, and then somebody came down and they started working with us, and we got it done. That was the first one. It's not a perfect world, but we have tried to work with this procurement ordinance, and we found out there's flaws. And I think this cleans up a lot of those flaws.
It does.
And so if we could just row together on this thing, I think there'll probably be another flaw or two a year or two down the road. So I am hoping that Corp Counsel is rowing with the Commission Counsel and Commission.
Yeah, well, and I agree with your point. And again, like I said, I think that the changes
you write that down,
were
Madam Chair?
necessary. The changes were necessary. They're great. They do a lot of clarification of the ordinance, and I really like that. Maybe if we can't memorialize something in the ordinance itself as to how, sort of a guideline that the administration can work by that says, look, guys, if the contract's expiring this day, you got to submit it to just be reasonable. I don't know, 4 weeks in advance. Give us some kind of and again, there's issues on our side. There's issues on both sides. So maybe if it's not in the ordinance itself, offline, we can have a discussion about some procedural sort of guidelines.
I'm just trying to wrap this. We've had a lot of discussion, our Commission Counsel and you, and so I am proposing that we move this as is, and I think it's been vetted pretty heavy, and we move forward with it, and we see how it works for us, and if there is major issues or minor issues that down the road, we address those too, because we want to row together. We don't want to just be adversarial.
Very good. Thank you.
Through the chair.
Aaron, and then Commissioner Colleen.
I do want to say that I do think that the administration and commission staff have worked really well together trying to get this to where it is today. The administration also, through the leadership of Janelle Allen, has been addressing the retroactive contracts, and we do take it seriously. And it's taking a lot longer than we anticipated, but we are trying to training technology that we've got in order to address this. So I think from a overall county perspective, it is recognized that it is an area that we need to work on, and we have been addressing it together. I think also getting the definitions as to when certain things will be done, and it's a policy, whether it's in the ordinance or it's a written policy between the two groups. I think that's something that we do need to address, and that way it is spelled out and it is very clear, because the biggest issue I've noticed is when it's an interpretation, not a written rule, that's when we start getting kind of down those dark alleys.
Right on. That's exactly why they need to clear it up. But Commissioner Colleen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I hear you right, Council, there's no veto letter coming forward on this matter.
No, I don't believe there's a veto.
And I don't want to talk, and I don't want to talk about some outstanding issues here to negotiate with regards to the procurement ordinance, because certainly as a commissioner, I have a list of outstanding issues that I see with the procurement ordinance. And as you referenced, I think it's a little loosey-goosey around comparable source as a place that's open for interpretation, that not everybody will arrive at the same conclusion. But, Madam Chair, I would move this forward to the full board for approval at our next full board meeting. Sorry?
First reading.
Felicia?
I mean, yeah, what's the
As
first
amended.
reading, right?
Right, it's as amended for first reading, yes.
That's what I'm doing,
Okay.
what she said.
Okay, good.
Support.
Okay. All right. I have a motion and support. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
I'm going to oppose it, yeah, because I need to look at this more carefully. I don't want to tie the hands of the purchasing department or the departments themselves. I really have to look into this further. So right now, I'm going to be a no.
Okay, please let the record reflect that Commissioner
Our
Clark
time
Coleman is a no. Okay, item passes.
I'm abstaining.
And please let the record reflect that Commissioner Scott has abstained. Item passes with 3. Okay, next item. We're gonna-
Returning to item 5, approval of a settlement in the matter of Philip Klawowski versus Wayne County.
Okay, now we have to go into closed session.
That's correct.
So I need a motion to
Correct.
go into, thank you. Item's been moved and supported. All in favor? Oh, I have to roll call. I'm sorry, Commissioner Clark Coleman. Got to do a roll call.
Commissioner Scott. Commissioner Clark Coleman. Commissioner Basham. Commissioner Colleen.
I guess I'll say yes.
Commissioner Webb.
Yes.
Chairwoman, we are now in closed session.
Okay, now we have to take a moment,
Second, shut the doors down.
close the doors, and turn off the mics.
Okay, all right. Thanks, council. Yeah, I will. Yeah.
Need it off? Okay.
System there.
Afterwards about why this.
No.
So call him. Call him.
Okay, you good to go? She can make the motion.
And ask them what law school they go to.
Commissioner, you can make the motion now.
Were you interested in making the motion to accept this settlement?
Support.
And it's been supported. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, item passes. Thank you, council, for coming.
Ne-
Appreciate it.
Next item,
Nice
E,
job.
such other matters as may be properly submitted before the committee.
Any such other matters?
Let me
Yes.
just
Commissioner
say,
Scott has such other matters.
now, going back to this Eric Sabri, the treasurer. Now, the last paragraph indicates, and the letter was to you, Madam Chair.
Right.
If you had any questions or anything, or wanted them to attend this meeting, did you ask them to attend?
Well, I just got this.
So it's not fair to blame Eric's office.
Well,
When we didn't notify them. Did not.
Well, it was June 18th.
And the budget, the other issue was raised by Commissioner Colleen that the, that the budget
It's an
instructions call
error.
for more than a general summary number.
All I'm saying is, we should have invited them to this meeting today.
Absolutely. But we shouldn't make it look as if
Right.
they
But
just didn't show up and disrespected this committee. Because they did say really clear that
Please notify my office.
But they did
There
see
should
it.
be someone
If
from
they
my
have a person
staff
up
to
there, if they have a
attend
person on there,
attendance.
just tell them.
so
So we're gonna contact them and make sure they come to the next
I
meeting.
got this morning.
Okay. Yep. So,
I got this morning, his letter.
so we're gonna contact them.
Well, who was responsible for getting it?
Staff was supposed to do it.
Well, the thing
We
is,
did.
well,
We sent out the agenda.
yeah, I have the agenda.
Next item F, public comments.
No members of the public that would like to make a comment? Any members of the public? There's no public, so no comments. Thank you.
Item G, adjournment.
So moved.
Sorry.
You just have someone.